Remember when Star Trek did the unthinkable and blew up the Enterprise itself? The Search for Spock is the film that resurrected a dead legend and destroyed a beloved starship in the same breath. But the version you know almost ended in a hospital room. And those are only the first of 17 secrets Hollywood never expected fans to uncover. Number 1. The studio wanted the movie to end in a sickbay. The film we love ends on Vulcan in a sweeping, mystical ceremony where Spock's soul is refused into his body and he slowly, hauntingly begins to remember his friends. It's the emotional payoff the whole movie builds toward. But that's not how the studio wanted it to end. Paramount's executives wanted something smaller and safer. Their plan was to end the movie with the escape from the Genesis planet. Get Kirk and Spock onto the Klingon ship, revive Spock quickly in the sickbay, add a short tag scene, and go home. No Vulcan, no ritual, no mysticism. Director Leonard Nimoy refused. He argued vehemently that the film had to travel to Vulcan and show Spock among his own people, straining to recall who he was. He believed audiences would find it moving, and he fought until the studio relented. The single most iconic image of the film, Spock reborn on his home planet, exists only because its director dug in and wouldn't let it be cut. Number 2. Spock's death was written with a secret escape hatch. Spock died at the end of The Wrath of Khan, but the filmmakers were never fully committed to keeping him dead, so they quietly built themselves a way out. In Khan's final act, just before Spock walks to his death, he presses his hand to McCoy's face and whispers a single word: "Remember." At the time, it played as a mysterious goodbye. In reality, producer Harve Bennett and Nimoy planted that mind meld deliberately as a loophole. Spock had transferred his katra, his living soul, into bones. They didn't yet know how they'd bring him back. They just made sure they could. So the entire plot of an entire film was seeded in advance by one word slipped into the previous movie's ending. Number 3. The studio boss thought Nimoy hated Star Trek. Nimoy desperately wanted to direct this film, but there was a huge obstacle. Paramount chief Michael Eisner believed Leonard Nimoy hated Star Trek.
I can do what he does. I know what he's doing, and I can do that.
Eisner was under the impression that Nimoy had actually demanded Spock be killed off in the last movie just to escape the role. That wasn't true, but the misunderstanding nearly cost Nimoy the director's chair. He had to personally sit down with Eisner and convince him the whole premise was false before he'd be trusted with the picture. Once he cleared it up, Nimoy reportedly told them plainly, "You're damned right, I want to direct that picture." He got the job, and it launched an entire second career behind the camera. Number 4. He had to direct himself lying unconscious with his eyes shut. Directing yourself is hard enough. Directing yourself while playing a comatose body is nearly impossible. And Nimoy called it the hardest scene in the film. For much of the movie, Spock lies unconscious, and there's a key sickbay scene where McCoy talks to his motionless friend. Nimoy was in the shot, playing dead, eyes closed, meaning he couldn't watch the performances or judge the framing while it was happening. DeForest Kelley, who played McCoy, was driven up the wall by it. He joked that Nimoy was trying to secretly direct him using tiny movements and flutters of his closed eyelids. A director giving notes through his eyelashes while pretending to be in a coma. It's one of the strangest directing challenges in film history. Number 5. Killing the Enterprise was supposed to be a secret. The gut punch of this movie is Kirk destroying his own ship. The first time in Star Trek history, the Enterprise itself is blown apart. And it was meant to be a shocking twist nobody saw coming. The filmmakers wanted the destruction guarded like a major spoiler, the way Star Wars hid the reveal that Vader was Luke's father. The plan was to let it detonate on unsuspecting audiences. Then the marketing department got hold of it. Paramount's promo team decided the ship's death was too good a hook to hide and built the trailers around it, literally billing it as the death of the Enterprise. The studio spoiled its own biggest surprise before a single ticket was sold. Number 6. The Klingon villain was played by Doc Brown. The snarling Klingon commander Krug, who murders his way across the Genesis planet, is played by none other than Christopher Lloyd, the beloved, wild-eyed Doc Brown from Back to the Future, released just 1 year later. Nimoy cast him on purpose. He'd admired Lloyd's unhinged intensity in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and on the sitcom Taxi, and knew he could play a genuinely menacing villain. So the same actor who'd soon be shouting about flux capacitors and gigawatts was, in 1984, a ruthless alien warlord ordering executions in full Klingon makeup. It's one of the great hidden double lives in 80s cinema. Number 7, Nimoy's first choice for Krug was rejected by the studio. Before Christopher Lloyd, Nimoy had someone else in mind for Krug, Edward James Olmos, the intense character actor who would later become a genre legend. Paramount vetoed the idea and nixed the casting. Olmos didn't get to be a Klingon. Here's the connection that ties Trek history together. Edward James Olmos went on, decades later, to lead the celebrated reboot of Battlestar Galactica as Admiral Adama. So an actor deemed wrong for one iconic sci-fi franchise's villain became the beating heart of its greatest rival. The universe has a sense of humor. Number 8, Saavik was recast over a paycheck. If you've seen The Wrath of Khan, the Vulcan Lieutenant Saavik looks different here, because she's played by a different actress. Kirstie Alley originated the role, but she didn't return. The reason was money. Paramount had fumbled her original contract, failing to include a clause locking in fair pay for sequels. When Search for Spock came around, Alley was reportedly offered less than she'd made on Khan, for a bigger role. She walked, and Robin Curtis stepped into the part. A studio's paperwork mistake permanently changed the face of one of Star Trek's most promising characters. Number 9, they murdered Captain Kirk's son. The film delivers one of the franchise's most brutal emotional blows. Down on the Genesis planet, Krug orders a hostage executed to force Kirk's hand. The one who steps forward and dies is David Marcus, Kirk's own son. David, the scientist who helped create the Genesis device, is killed defending Saavik, and Kirk learns of his son's death over a comm line, collapsing backward in shock in one of William Shatner's rawest moments. The movie about resurrecting one beloved character had the nerve to permanently kill another, and make it the emotional cost of Spock's return. Number 10. An arsonist set fire to the Genesis planet. During production, a real fire broke out on the Paramount lot and damaged the elaborate Genesis planet set. This wasn't an accident of hot studio lights. Investigators later concluded the blaze had been deliberately set. They never identified a suspect or a motive, and among the people who rushed to help put it out was Captain Kirk himself. William Shatner pitched in to fight the flames. So one of the film's key sets was nearly lost to an unsolved act of arson, extinguished in part by the star of the movie. Number 11. The Klingon dialogue was a real invented language. When Krug and his crew bark orders, they're not speaking gibberish. They're speaking Klingon, a genuine constructed language built with its own grammar and vocabulary by linguist Mark Okrand, greatly expanded for this film. Christopher Lloyd took it seriously and struggled to master the guttural tongue, working closely with Okrand and Nimoy to make every harsh syllable sound authentic. That effort paid off far beyond the movie. The language seeded here grew into the most widely spoken fictional language on Earth, a full tongue that fans still study, speak, and even translate Shakespeare into today. Number 12. Industrial Light and Magic built an entire new fleet. To bring the film to life, Nimoy turned to George Lucas's effects house, Industrial Light and Magic. And they didn't just touch up old models. They designed and built 5 major new starship and station designs from scratch. Among them were the sleek, menacing Klingon bird of prey with its folding wings, the massive Federation flagship Excelsior, and the sprawling interior of Space Dock. Several of these designs became franchise staples, reused for decades afterward. So much of the look of Star Trek that fans took for granted in later films and shows was actually born in this single 1984 production on ILM's workbenches. Number 13. The film flips its own most famous line. The Wrath of Khan gave Star Trek its most quoted piece of philosophy. As Spock sacrifices himself, he tells Kirk, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one." Search for Spock is built entirely to answer that line. When Kirk risks his career, his ship, and his son's memory to rescue a single friend, Spock later asks him why he came back for him. Kirk's reply reverses it completely. The needs of the one outweighed the needs of the many. The whole movie is a rebuttal to the previous film's thesis. A story arguing that sometimes love and loyalty matter more than cold logic. That inverted line is the emotional key to the entire trilogy. Number 14. This movie quietly launched Leonard Nimoy's directing career. Search for Spock was Leonard Nimoy's first time directing a feature film. A gamble the studio almost didn't allow. It worked. The film was a solid hit and proved he could handle a blockbuster. That success handed him the reins to the very next film, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, which became the most commercially successful and beloved entry in the original crew's run. And Hollywood noticed. On the strength of these films, Nimoy went on to direct the mega-hit comedy Three Men and a Baby, one of the top-grossing movies of its year. The man once mistaken for hating Star Trek used it to build an entire second career, all starting with the picture he had to beg to direct. Number 15. 7 different people played Spock. Spock spends most of the film unconscious or absent, so how is he in so many scenes? Because on the regenerating Genesis planet, his body is reborn as an infant and ages rapidly, right before our eyes. To pull that off, the young, aging Spock was played by a rotating cast of actors at different ages. Carl Steven, Vadia Potenza, Stephen Manley, and Joe W. Davis portrayed him at roughly 9, 13, 17, and 25. On top of that, Frank Welker provided Spock's screams, and Steve Blaylock served as Nimoy's double. Add it all up, and a grand total of 7 different performers contributed to a single character. All so that Leonard Nimoy, the real Spock, could stay behind the camera directing them. Number 16. An 87-year-old legend was coaxed out of retirement for one scene. The Vulcan High Priestess Talar, who performs the sacred ritual that restores Spock's soul, is played by Dame Judith Anderson, one of the most revered stage and screen actresses of the 20th century, famous for her chilling turn in Hitchcock's Rebecca. By 1984, she was 87 years old and had been absent from the screen for roughly 14 years. She had no interest in a science fiction movie. Nimoy later admitted he had to beg, plead, and cajole her into taking the part. So the emotional climax of the entire film, the moment Spock is brought back to life, rests on the shoulders of a dame in her late 80s, whom the director practically had to talk into showing up. Number 17. A face from the very first Star Trek is hiding in the background. Watch the crowd carefully, and you'll spot a piece of living Star Trek history. Grace Lee Whitney, who played Yeoman Janice Rand back in the original 1960s television series, makes a quiet cameo here as an unnamed woman in cafeteria. It was a small but deliberate nod, quietly folding an original series veteran back into the film alongside the main crew. And the film she blended into was no small success. The Search for Spock went on to gross around $87 million worldwide, proving audiences would happily follow this crew even after killing off their most famous ship. And Star Trek's movie era rolled confidently on. The Search for Spock is a film about bringing something back from the dead. And it almost had to fight for its own life to exist, from a director nobody trusted, an ending the studio tried to cut, and a set someone tried to burn down. It gave up a starship and a captain's son just to return one Vulcan to the living. Let me know which hidden truth shocked you the most. And if you enjoyed this journey through Star Trek's forgotten history, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.